Mom said, "She's the daughter I'm proud of at my sister's birthday," then handed me the $3,450 bill. The private room at the Monarch smelled of truffle oil and quiet money. My sister Lauren sat at the head of the table like a queen on her throne, her face glowing under the dim amber lighting. She was celebrating what she called her brand launch, a 2-page spread in a local lifestyle magazine that she insisted was going to put her on the map. My mother, Susan, stood up, tapping her fork against her crystal flute. The room hushed instantly. "To Lauren," she said, her voice thick with performative pride. "To the bravest person in this family, the one who isn't afraid to chase the big dreams." Everyone clapped. I clapped too, my hands moving mechanically. Then the waiter arrived. He didn't go to my mother. He didn't go to my father. He walked straight to me and placed a heavy leather folder next to my water glass. I opened it. $3,450. I stared at the number. It wasn't just a bill. It was an assumption. My mother leaned over her breath, smelling of expensive Merlot. "Teacher salaries are stable, sweetie," she whispered, her hand patting my arm. "Support your sister. It's the least you can do." I looked at her hand on my arm. Then I looked at the folder. I didn't say a word. I just closed it, placed my fingertips on the leather, and slid it back across the table until it hit the stem of her wine glass with a sharp clink. Before I tell you what I did next, I want to know. Drop a comment and tell me where you're listening from and what time it is for you. Right now. I'd love to see who's part of our community tonight. The silence in the restaurant was instant and total. It wasn't the polite hush of a pause in conversation. It was the suffocating vacuum that follows a gunshot. My mother stared at the folder resting against her wine glass, her face frozen in a ridge of shock. Lauren's mouth hung open, her eyes darting around the room to see who was watching. The guests, minor investors, a few local bloggers, friends of friends, shifted in their seats, their eyes wide. I stood up. My legs felt strangely light, like they weren't quite attached to the floor. I looked at Lauren, then at my mother. "I think the brand should pay for the launch," I said. My voice was calm, steady, loud enough to carry to the back of the room. I didn't wait for a response. I turned and walked toward the exit. Behind me, I heard the scrape of a chair and my mother's hissed whisper, "Madison, sit down." I kept walking. I walked past the host, stand past the coat check, and out the heavy oak doors into the cold night air. The wind hit my face sharp and biting, and for the first time all evening, I took a full breath. My fiancé, Jacob, was right behind me. He didn't say a word. He just opened the car door for me, his jaw set in a hard line. We got in and he started the engine. The drive home was silent. The only sound, the hum of the tires on the pavement and the rhythmic thrum of my own pulse in my ears. I stared out the window at the passing streetlights, waiting for the guilt to hit. I waited for the familiar wave of panic, the urge to apologize, the desperate need to fix whatever mess I had just made. But it didn't come. Instead, there was a strange cold clarity. I looked at my hands resting in my lap. They weren't trembling. For years, I had been the one to smooth things over, to absorb the shocks, to pay the price for everyone else's comfort. Tonight, I had handed the bill back, and the world hadn't ended. The sky hadn't fallen. I was just sitting in a car driving home with my wallet still closed. Jacob reached over and took my hand, squeezing it tight. "You okay?" he asked quietly. "I don't know," I said, my voice sounding foreign to my own ears. "I think I just resigned." "Good," he said. It was about time. We pulled into our driveway and I looked up at the dark windows of our apartment. It looked peaceful, safe. Inside, my phone was probably already lighting up with notifications, a digital storm gathering force. But out here, in the quiet of the car, I felt something I hadn't felt in a decade. I felt like I was finally driving my own life. I unlocked the door to our apartment and stepped into the quiet dark of the living room.
For years, I had convinced myself that I was the strong one, the fixer, the responsible daughter who held the family together while everyone else fell apart. But standing there in the hallway, shedding my coat, I realized that was a lie I had told myself to survive. I wasn't a martyr. I was a gambler. There's a concept in psychology called the gambler's fallacy, the mistaken belief that if an event happens more frequently than normal during a certain period, it will happen less frequently in the future, or vice versa. In relationships, it manifests as the belief that if you just put enough kindness, enough money, enough effort into the machine, eventually it has to pay out. I had treated my family like a rigged slot machine for a decade. I kept feeding it coins, convinced that the jackpot of love and validation was mathematically inevitable. I thought about the coins I had dropped into that slot. The $3,000 from my father's therapy when he had his midlife crisis and bought a sports car he couldn't afford. The security deposit for Lauren's first apartment in the city because she didn't have a credit history. The countless loans for emergencies that were really just consequences of their own poor planning. Every time I paid, I told myself, this was the last coin. This was the one that would make them see me. This was the investment that would finally yield a return of respect. And sometimes the machine would flash a few lights, a thank you text, a hug at Christmas, a moment where my mother would say, I don't know what we'd do without you, Madison. Those small payouts were just enough to keep me at the handle, pulling the lever again and again. But tonight, looking at that bill in the steakhouse, I realized the game was fixed. The machine wasn't broken. It was designed to take. It was never going to pay out the jackpot I was waiting for. I walked into the kitchen and poured a glass of water. My hands were steady. I wasn't waiting for a win anymore. I had simply run out of coins. I walked into the bedroom, the silence of the apartment feeling heavy and charged. My phone was on the nightstand, face down. Even from across the room, I could hear it vibrating against the wood. It wasn't a gentle buzz. It was a frantic, angry rattle. I stared at it for a moment, the screen lighting up the dark room with spasmodic flashes. I picked it up. The notifications were stacked like bricks. Lauren, are you insane? You humiliated me in front of investors. Do you have any idea how bad this looks? Dad, your mother is crying in the car. This is petty, Madison, even for you. Mom had left a voicemail. I didn't listen to it, but the transcription preview was enough. I don't know who you think you are, but you need to fix this now. I scrolled through the messages, my thumb swiping up, up. Not a single one asked why. Not a single one asked if I could afford the bill. Not a single one asked if I was okay. They weren't worried about me. They were worried about the disruption to their supply chain. They were angry because the ATM had eaten their card. It was a barrage, a synchronized assault designed to overwhelm my defenses, to make me retreat into apology and compliance. But as I read the words selfish, dramatic, ruinous, I didn't feel the familiar crush of shame. I felt something colder. I felt like a scientist observing a specimen under a microscope. This wasn't love. It wasn't even family. It was a transaction that had gone sour. I sat on the edge of the bed and opened my laptop. The blue light illuminated my face in the dark room. I didn't type a response. I didn't call anyone back. Instead, I opened a blank spreadsheet. If they wanted to talk about what I owed them, fine, we would talk. But we wouldn't use guilt as the currency. We would use math. I cracked my knuckles and started typing. This wasn't an emotional reaction anymore. It was a professional audit. I stared at the blank spreadsheet, the cursor blinking like a heartbeat. Date, item, cost. I started with the easy things. The rent for Lauren's studio apartment 6 years ago, check number 45, $1,200. The bail money for Dad's DUI, $5,000. The plane tickets for Mom's mental health break to Sedona, $800. The numbers added up quickly, a column of black ink that told the story of my own financial stagnation. But as I typed, I realized the money was only half the debt. I created a new column and titled it The Ghost Ledger. This was for the things that didn't have receipts but had cost me everything. The night I missed my own anniversary dinner because Lauren had a panic attack about a casting call. Cost, one ruined memory. The weekend I spent cleaning out Dad's garage because he couldn't face it alone, only to find him watching football inside. Cost, 2 days of my life. The time Mom told me my promotion was nice, but spent 40 minutes talking about Lauren's new haircut. Cost, my self-esteem. I typed until my fingers ached. I listed every swallowed apology, every ignored boundary, every time I had been the designated driver, the therapist, the emotional punching bag. I was building a balance sheet of grief, and the total was staggering. I wasn't just in the red. I was bankrupt. Beside me, Jacob was scrolling through his phone. "Hey," he said, his voice tight. "Look at this." He held up his screen. It was the photo he'd taken of the receipt at the restaurant. He zoomed in on the bottom section, past the steak and the wine. There, in small print, was a line item I had missed in my rage. Private room deposit. Future event hold, $1,500. I froze. "What is that?" "I don't know," he said, "but it's dated for next month." I grabbed my phone and called the restaurant. It was late, but the manager picked up. I put on my best mother's assistant voice. "Hi, I'm calling to confirm the details for the deposit on the Henderson receipt from tonight. We just want to make sure the date is correct for the anniversary party." The manager tapped on a keyboard. "Yes, ma'am, the Tuscany room is reserved for Susan and David's 30th anniversary celebration on the 15th. The $1,500 deposit secures the space." I hung up. My hand was shaking so hard I almost dropped the phone. The 30th anniversary party, the one Mom had told me was canceled, the one she said they couldn't afford this year. They weren't canceling it, they were booking it. And they were using my money, the money I was supposed to pay for Lauren's dinner, to secure the venue for a party I wasn't even invited to. I looked at Jacob. They didn't ask to come over. They announced it Sunday afternoon. My phone buzzed with a text from my father. "We're downstairs. Buzz us up. We need to settle this." I looked at Jacob. He was standing by the kitchen counter, arms crossed, looking ready for a fight. "Do you want me to stay?" he asked. "No," I said. "You stay in the bedroom. I need to do this myself." I needed them to see that my strength didn't come from him, it came from me. I buzzed them in. When I opened the door, the hallway seemed to shrink. My father walked in first, filling the space with his heavy, disappointed presence. Mom followed behind, clutching her purse like a weapon. Lauren brought the rear, wearing oversized sunglasses indoors, presumably to hide eyes swollen from performative crying. They didn't take off their coats, they didn't say hello. They marched into my living room and claimed the space as if they held the deed. "Sit down," my father said. Not a question, a command. I sat in the armchair facing the sofa. I placed the manila folder I had prepared on the coffee table between us. Inside were the spreadsheets, the bank statements, and the blown-up photo of the receipt with the Italy deposit circled in red marker. I rested my hand on top of it. "We are going to reset," my mother began, her voice tight and controlled. She sat on the edge of the sofa, her posture rigid. "You have lost your way, Madison. Tuesday night was a disgrace. You embarrassed your sister. You disrespected your father, and you made a scene that people are still talking about. I've never been so humiliated," Lauren added, her voice cracking perfectly on cue. "My investors were asking if we're financially unstable. Do you know how hard it is to get funding when your own sister implies you're a charity case?" "We are willing to move past this," Dad interrupted, holding up a hand to silence Lauren. He looked at me with that familiar mix of sternness and pity. "We know you've been under stress. Maybe you're jealous of Lauren's success. Maybe you're feeling left behind. We forgive you for that. But you need to apologize. You need to pay the bill you walked on, and you need to make this right." I looked at them, really looked at them. For years, this tribunal would have terrified me. I would have been crying, begging them to understand, desperate to prove I wasn't the bad guy. But today, the fear was gone. In its place was the cold detachment of an auditor staring at a failing company's books. They weren't my family in this moment. They were bad investments trying to secure another round of funding. "Are you finished?" I asked. My voice was soft, flat. "We're finished when you apologize," Mom snapped. I didn't apologize. I didn't scream. I just tapped my finger on the manila folder. "I'm not here to apologize," I said. "I'm here to review the accounts." The air in the room shifted. They sensed it, a drop in pressure. The sudden realization that the script they had written for me was not the one I was reading. They thought they were here to discipline a rebellious child. They didn't realize they were sitting across from a creditor who was about to call in the loan. I opened the manila folder. The sound of the paper sliding against the coffee table was the only noise in the room. I picked it up, the blown-up image of the receipt. I didn't look at them. I looked at the numbers. "Item 1, I read aloud, my voice devoid of inflection. "Dry-aged ribeye, medium rare, $85. "Item 2, Bottle of Beef Clico, $400. Item 3, truffle fries, $18. Madison, stop this, my mother hissed, leaning forward. You're being ridiculous. I didn't stop. I dropped my finger to the bottom line, the one circled in red ink. Item 4. I continued, looking up to meet her eyes. Private room deposit, future event hold, $1,500. I paused, letting the words hang in the air like smoke. I called the restaurant, Mom. They confirmed the reservation, the Tuscany room for your 30th anniversary party next month, the one you told me was canceled because you were too broke to celebrate. The color drained from my mother's face. My father shifted uncomfortably, suddenly finding the pattern on the rug fascinating. Lauren stopped fake crying and looked at her parents, confused. You said you weren't doing a party, she said. We didn't want to burden you, my mother stammered, her eyes darting between me and Lauren. We knew you were stressed about money, Madison. We didn't want you to feel obligated to buy a gift. Obligated? I let out a short, dry laugh. You didn't want me to feel obligated, so you just used my credit card to book the venue? I picked up the second stack of papers, the spreadsheet, the ghost ledger. I fanned it out on the table. It was 5 pages long, single-spaced. This, I said, pointing to the columns, is an audit of the last 5 years. Lauren's rent in 2019, Dad's DUI lawyer fees, Mom's mental health trips, the phone bill I've been paying since I was 22, the streaming services you all use but don't pay for. I looked at my father. You called me petty. You said I was ruining the family dynamic. I tapped the total at the bottom of the last page, $42,350. That is what I have paid into this family in the last 5 years. That is a down payment on a house. That is a wedding. That is my future liquidated to subsidize your lifestyles. My father's face went red. We raised you. You owe us. I don't owe you anything. The volume of my voice didn't rise, but the intensity did. It cut through his bluster like a knife. I realized something tonight. I'm not a daughter to you. I never was. I'm a venture capitalist. I'm the silent partner you go to when you need a bailout, but don't want to give up any equity. I stood up, towering over them as they sat on my secondhand furniture, and I have decided that this is a bad investment. I'm pulling my funding. I pointed to the door. Madison, my mother, pleaded, standing up, reaching for my hand. Let's just talk about this. We can work out a payment plan. I pulled my hand away as if she'd burned me. There is no payment plan. The account is closed. Get out of my house and leave your key on the table. If you try to use it again, I'll change the locks. If you harass me, I'll take this spreadsheet to small claims court. I am done purchasing your love. They looked at me, really looked at me, and realized the bank was closed. There were no more loans to be had. Slowly, silently, my father stood up. He put his key on the coffee table next to the evidence of his greed. He didn't look back. They filed out one by one, the door clicking shut behind them with a finality that echoed in my bones. The leaves outside my apartment window turned from green to gold, and then to brown. It has been 3 months since the audit. My phone sits on the coffee table, screen black, silent. For years, that silence would have terrified me. It would have felt like punishment, like the calm before a storm of guilt trips and demands. But now, the silence feels different. It feels like a receipt for a debt fully paid. It feels like peace. I opened my banking app this morning. The numbers were higher than I had ever seen them. The monthly drain, the phone bills, the streaming services, the emergency loans that never came back, had stopped. The $42,000 I would have bled out over the next 5 years is staying right here. I turned to Jacob, who was making coffee in the kitchen. Book it, I said. We aren't going to Italy. We aren't going where my mother wanted to act out her fantasy of a perfect family. We're going to Tokyo, because that is where I want to go. And for the first time in my life, my resources are funding my own desires, not someone else's delusions. I sat down at my desk and opened the laptop one last time. I looked at the spreadsheet, the ghost ledger. It was no longer a source of anger. It was just data, historical records of a failed business venture. I moved the file to the archive folder and clicked close. The screen went black, reflecting my own face back at me. I looked tired, yes, but I also looked free. I realized then that the cost of my freedom was high. I lost a mother, a father, and a sister. I lost the illusion of a safety net. But looking around my quiet, peaceful living room, knowing that no one was coming to disturb my sanctuary, I knew the price of staying would have been higher. The account is closed, the balance is zero, and I am finally in the black. If you've ever felt like an ATM for people who treat you like a stranger, share this story. You are not a bank, and you don't owe anyone your peace. Subscribe for more stories about breaking.